I'll start off as usual with some highlights from this week, or sorry, the last few weeks. So first off, I want to highlight the work that Gidon has been doing in encryption. That is very close to going in and is really cool. So basically, I think he has a end-to-end working copy, and we're getting pieces of that committed to the code base now. So what that is the first part just went in this last week. It's a standard encryption manager, which is, you can plug in your own encryption manager, and it handles basically handles encryption of files transparently to Iceberg. However, what we're adding is the ability to basically make the encryption manager capable of using the native encryption in Parquet and ORC formats. That's the piece that's going in next. And manage the metadata for basically key metadata in a standard way, and start putting that into the metadata files and encrypting the metadata files. So right now we're working on that leaf layer where we have the encryption manager that then plugs in and adds Avro and Parquet encryption support, which is really cool. Then we're going to be adding more and more support for the layers above. So it's not quite ready to be used and actually can't be turned on, but all of that is going in. And that's going to be really cool. So you'll have one table level key that gives you the ability to read basically manifest lists, and then the manifest lists and manifests have all of the key material for the next layer down the tree. Next, I think the other really exciting thing that has been happening is support for the REST catalog, support for views. There is excitement in the REST catalog because we added support for views. So big thanks to Eduard for pushing that through and getting the view support in the REST catalog all fixed up. It works basically the same way as the tables in the REST catalog, where you post to a route to basically make updates to a view, and you can make arbitrary updates, although with views it's a whole lot simpler and there aren't like a ton of things you can do. You can add new versions basically and assert that we're working with the same view UID and things like that. Also, just noticed that view support in the Nessie catalog recently went in, which is really awesome. Really glad to see views getting picked up in the other catalogs. I know we've also done at least one review on views in the Hive catalog, which I'm going to go ahead and add that to the agenda because I think it'd be really good to talk about how we want to represent views and sort of some of the things that were happening in that PR. But I think getting view support out in a standard way is really great. Amog also has a PR out for adding view support to, Iceberg view support in the REST catalog in Trino. And I think Eduard has been working on getting that working with Spark without actually without requiring modifications to Spark. So hopefully sometime in the next release, Java 1.5 will have view support at least in Spark, and then shortly thereafter, hopefully we'll have view support in Trino. I am not familiar with the support in the Glue catalog. Eduard, do you know if there's a PR out for the Glue catalog?
There is not. There's not. At least not based on the latest Iceberg view support. I mean, maybe Glue has some view support, but it's not the official. It's not based off of Iceberg views.
Yeah, so I talked to someone at reInvent about this, and they did roll out their own view support, but they think it's going to be fully compatible with Iceberg views and the common views. So I think that those are going to be reconciled and upgraded on that side. It would make sense to try and get that in. So I'll check with Jack and other people from AWS to see if there's a way to get that in. I'm sure they're tracking it. The next thing is Puchang from from Pinterest added support for spec ID in the rewrite manifest procedure. This was something that we decided was totally fine to expose through the API, but we really didn't have a good way or plan for exposing specs, selecting a particular partition spec from a table. We went ahead and said, it's probably fine if we expose spec ID, because I don't think we have a better option. So I think that'll work. It's good to have that in there so that we can go rewrite manifests from different specs. So thanks, Puchang, for adding that. And then the one that I am probably most excited about is watermark support in the Flip 27 source. Watermarks are really, really useful. So really glad to see that made it in as well. On the Rust side, thank you, Faco, for the updates here. Working towards release, and looks like the manifest list and manifest reader and writer went in today. Really cool to see so much progress on the REST side. Faco, do you want to talk a little bit about what we will be capable of doing in the first Rust release?
Yeah, so the idea about the first release just to have to be able to load a table and maybe even to do some scan planning there. So that's still a bit up for debate. But we had a discussion what does it and how do we want to move this forward? And I think one of the things just to have the release out, also get some more attention on it, get more people to the project, and also have all the things in place to do the actual release, and so all the guides and how to test it and stuff like that.
Sounds great. Do we have a plan for where that documentation is going to live? Is that just going to be rust.iceberg.
That's still for debate. So that's also in the link. I suggest to do it at rust.iceberg. And so we can also migrate it to the common docs later on. But for Rust, it's more common to host your docs at what's it? The Rust and the pipeline of the Maven Central of Rust. So yeah, so probably the Java doc and stuff like that is going to live over there, and more technical stuff and all examples are probably going to go into rust.iceberg.apache.org.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, cool. Really excited to see that progressing. Thank you for the update. On the releases, looks like I'm going to hand it back to you, Faco. Let's talk about the PyIceberg 0.6 release, where we're adding write support.
Yeah, so that's also a big one. I think it went a bit slow because of the big reInvent thing that a lot of people were going through. So for the write support in Python, we actually got the snapshot summary generation in. So that was a big step. Now I cleaned up the PR to get all the rest of the writing in. And this is also like a call out, if you have anything that you want to get in, make sure to let it know on the Iceberg Slack or on the dev list, so we can make sure that we can gather everything that we want to get into the 0.6 release. Also, a lot of bug fixes are coming in, so that's also great to see. So yeah, just more like a shout out. Is anything particular that you want to get in? Yeah, please let us know.
All right. Then on the Java release, I don't think that we have set a date for a 1.5 release yet. And now that I'm thinking about it, JV, I think you wanted to add a PR to documentation that said hey, we target once a quarter. Did that get merged, or do we need to take a look at that?
I don't think it has been merged, and I think actually the website PR is not yet complete. So give me a day or so. I will open one that we can review all together.
Sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, because I think it is good to communicate that that's our target. When did we do the last release? It seems like it's been a little while, but it's been a blur. Does anyone remember?
You mean 1.4.2, Ryan?
Yeah, when was the 1.4 release?
1.4.2 was a couple of months
Start
ago.
of October. Yeah.
Start of October. Okay.
October. Yep.
So probably targeting January for Oh, November 7th, but the
Yeah, a
1.4
month ago.
was October. Okay. So we should probably aim for January for the 1.5 release. Yeah, Bits?
Yeah, just curious if we think we can target getting the documentation update by that time, or should we try to save it for after at this point?
I don't think that we want to block the release, but I would definitely love to get the documentation done. I think it's currently blocked on being able to replace the current site. So
yeah, with the design.
Once it's able to replace the current site, then I think we can move forward with it. But as of now, I think it's blocked, and we wouldn't want to prevent a code release based on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so cool. Then we'll target January. Is there anything that we want to get in there that we should plan on addressing now? Oh.
I was going to say, Anton is not in his normal time zone, so he's not here. But he and I have been talking about he's got a lot of work in delete executor cache. It should all be flag enabled, and it just needs some more eyes on it before we merge it in. So please take a look at that if you have some time. But it's shown really promising results. Basically, the few things that have been added are like multi-threaded reading of delete files, caching delete files, and some primitive like locality assignment of reads based on where delete files are cached, using the broken fake executor IP thing that Spark lets you do. So
I don't know how I feel about that, but
it's in the Kafka connector, so I mean, I wish there was a better mechanism for doing it, but there's really nothing else.
yeah. So for anyone who's not following there, basically, if you want to be able to cache things across Spark tasks, there's no guarantee that that Spark will actually schedule tasks that are in some group together or on the same executor. So what we have done, and what others have done as well, is basically lie and say that choose a random executor for a given group of tasks and say that they're all local to that executor, so that Spark will try to place them on that executor if it has room. It's not terrible, but it's also basically lying about locality and kind of difficult. It also doesn't work well with dynamic allocation because you basically choose an executor from your smallest set because you do all of this planning at before you've scaled up for the number of tasks in the job. So it's kind of awkward, but it tends to work really well.
You also get a global configuration for your entire application that controls how long to wait for locality. So it's also completely blunt and kind of disgusting on that end. So it's full of all kinds of fun things to know about.
Yeah, maybe we can work on something better in Spark, but okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to get into a Java 1.5 release?
I have a couple of things.
Yeah.
I think one is we'll work on the Flink 1.8 support. The PI is merged, but we're waiting. During the review, we found some like a compatibility break from Flink. They changed the type of some of the fields. So there's we'll start the discussion. Peter, let's start discussion with the Flink community. So we're waiting for the patch release from the Flink. Then this will be ready.
Okay.
This one. Second one is we think about making the Flip 27 so the default one. So the bulk of the code that we merged July last year. Over the last 1 year, we have also made a few improvements. So we think it's ready to be production ready, GA ready, and make it default. So I'm going to start the discussion thread in the dev mailing list when we have one minor change ready. And also we also depend on 118. We're going to make it default only for 118 because we depend some of the feature in 118. So we'll start the discussion in the mailing list.
That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I like how we can flip defaults on or off in like external external support, because that allows us to basically pick up on like the releases upstream where you're already porting to a new version and dealing with things like that. So that's a good idea. I like that for the Flip 27 source.
I do want to, for the 118 thing, we probably should, just as like a future community thing, we should never be blocked on like a reversion in like an external third party. Like if Spark, you know, releases a theoretical 3.4.3 that breaks backwards compatibility, that doesn't mean we shouldn't support Spark 3.4.3. Or wait, because like those artifacts will always be out. We'll never be able to prevent users from like choosing the Flink 118 jars that have this compatibility break. So even if we wait, it'll always still be out there as like a landmine.
Yes, that's why we did merge the PR, but I think we're not going to announce it until patch release because it can cause problems.
Yeah, it's just one of those things we can't protect people from as much.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we know there's an issue, like we can definitely like hold and not announce or something like that until it's fixed, right? Like that makes sense to me. Just not releasing our support until there's at least a workaround, or we know what the resolution is. Because if they change some, you know, compatibility and we have no idea whether we're going to need to like change the classes to use the new types, or whether the old types will be restored, then that like coming to a resolution there seems like a good idea to me.
Yeah, so that's already corrected from the Flink community. It's they're going to reward that change. So yeah, they're going to reward the change. So,
yeah,
should be quick. I expect to be released in a week or two, within a week or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I guess it's probably on a case-by-case basis. I just worry about someone making a change that we just can't ever be compatible with, or like is permanently breaking.
And I agree with that, right? Like in general, yeah, if some other project breaks support, then there's not much we can do about it besides like drop another release that fixes it or works around it or something like that. Yeah. So the next thing is, at least for a 1.5 release, is I would love to get Spark View support in, because I think we're actually very close. We can inject. So the primary blocker that we've hit so far for being able to use Iceberg views is that there's no way to, well, I guess in the data source v2 code in Spark, there's the rules for views basically say, hey, if we haven't resolved a view as v1, throw an exception, rather than getting to the check phase and then throwing the exception. So you can't just add a new resolution rule and have it work, because if the other rule runs first, it'll throw an exception to say, hey, this is a v2 view and we don't support v2 views. Really annoying. So what we have to do is get the rule in before, like basically before the substitution batch in the analyzer. So I've been working with Eduard. We think we have a way to do this fairly cleanly. I would love to get that in if possible, because yeah, it would be a long time to be able to start using views if we don't get it into Spark now. So I don't think this is, again, like something that we would block a release over. But I would like to at least target that if everyone agrees. And it would be great to have some of the folks that are familiar with Spark help out and review that as well.
I just want to say, like, I think it's actually, I know you said we wouldn't want to block a release, but I do think it's kind of important, because if the work for views is going into Trino, it would be helpful to have at least two sides or two engines that can kind of support this, so we can fix any follow-on issues. Otherwise, we're going to have, you know, Trino kind of ahead in terms of being able to manipulate views, and then the Spark side is going to lag behind. So it would be nice to just like coordinate those two, so at least we have two options to explore any sort of inconsistencies or problems going forward.
All right. And then Ajantha, I think you wanted to talk about removing the Spark 3.2 support.
Yeah, in the previous release, we have actually deprecated the Spark 3.2. So I think in this release we can remove it. If the users want it, they can still go back to the older Iceberg release. It is just an extra overhead to maintain the folder.
I think that's what we agreed to last time. I'd have to double check those threads, but it sounds like a very reasonable thing to do to me, since it was deprecated.
Yeah, I can work on it. Yeah, sure.
Great. All right. I was hoping to hold off on Java 2 until we've had a little more discussion. I don't think that we're quite ready for a Java 2 release. There are a few good things to talk about here, but since it's already almost halfway through, let's talk more about the REST catalog stuff, if that's okay. Unless anyone really wants to go for the Java release.
I assume we're doing like spec 3 in Java 2, and that I think we need to have like a whole meeting on deciding what's bound in that. Oh,
I was not planning on having spec v3 and Java 2 combined.
Okay.
I mean, we did that for one, didn't we? Where we said, hey, v2 is basically solid, and I think the problem there is that it would push out Java 2. And there are a bunch of things that we need to sort of decide and fix. We've got quite a few deprecations. And like, if you don't fix those, then you'll just never fix them.
So you mainly just want to have a checkpoint to deprecate and remove things from the code base?
Yeah, you know, like dropping Hive from the source tree is a great example. Moving to resolving file IO. The one I was hoping to wait on was fixing the ID fallback here. So there was some code that has been in there since the very, very beginning, where like Netflix did resolution by position rather than resolution by name. And resolution by position has a fallback strategy that is just by default in the code. If we don't have IDs for a data file, we'll just start assigning IDs. The problem is that's completely unsafe. It does not work for any nested structure. And so it presents a lot of problems. And I think that we need to get rid of it. So like there are a lot of things where I don't know that I would want to hold up a breaking release for just to make sure we get v3 in. Now maybe we could do a Java 4 at the time when we had, or sorry, Java 3 when we get the v3 done.
I like the marketing on that too. Okay, no, I totally understand now. I see that. Okay, so Java 2 is really about cleaning up some decisions and breaking people off of some old code paths.
Yeah, well, like the scan planning paths as well. You know, like we introduced a whole bunch of new scan classes, and that whole code base is kind of a mess, where you've got, you know, table scan as well as data scan, and like there's a lot of cleanup that we need to do in there. So I think we want to work on those two things in parallel.
There might be a few things, like as you mentioned with the ID fallback, that we have to do around like enabling people to fix to move forward, because anything right now where you may have used like add files or something where you did not have a mapping file, but you've introduced data into your data set, it may just be like using this fallback as a way to resolve columns without people really knowing. And then the moment they upgrade, it's like, obviously we want to provide good messaging about, hey, you have a file, you don't have a mapping, column ID mapping, that needs to be present. So we need some mechanism for people to kind of correct for this.
So we did add as a default to add files, and all of the import code is adding a name mapping when it gets called, but I forget when we did that. It might have been like 1.1. So anyone before then may have that.
I thought we did that early enough, but I didn't think we did it for add files. I thought we only did it in
the migrate snapshot.
Migrate and snapshot.
Now I gotta check, because we unified them all to like go down the same code path at some point, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that those mistakes are something that we need a 2.0 to correct, because like if anyone is using that, then we need them to like know that there's a breaking change in Iceberg, that we're not going to do the fallback anymore, and add that name mapping. So
yeah, I think the main thing is like proper detection and reporting on those, and then we need to have some sort of path forward for people who get into that situation of like, okay, how do I now go build a name mapping? Because most people have no idea what that is.
Yeah, and the problem is, I think people are also relying on this. So we know, for example, Fivetran, when they started producing Iceberg, and they've since fixed this problem, they were incompatible with Snowflake, because Snowflake was like, you didn't set field IDs. Mm-hmm. But it appeared to them to work because the Java mapping could read it, and they just didn't have nested data that had changed. So it all appeared to work when it actually didn't. So I think we want to prevent any of those future situations from like deceiving people that it's working when it's actually not. Okay, anyway, let's get to REST catalog scan planning, if we can, because I think this is an exciting proposal from the AWS Athena team. So I'm actually really excited about this. Russell, I know you guys are also looking at this. So I'll give a quick overview of the proposal so far. It is basically to introduce two APIs, or two API calls. One, which is where you take your selected columns, a filter, and other like scan planning information, and post that to a REST service. And basically that is a create scan. So you say, here are the parameters for this scan, create a scan for me. And then the response to that is a list of shards, or specifically shard IDs. And a shard is some unit of work that is unspecified. You might get 1 shard, you might get 10 shards, you might get 100 shards. And then there's another endpoint where you say, get me the results for this shard ID. And we send back the straightforward JSON representation of a file scan task. So basically a scan, for to plan a scan, you would create a scan using the post route, pass your filter, pass your columns. Then you would get back a list of other calls that you need to make, and you go to the shard route, say get this scan shard, and that gives you a list of tasks, and then you accumulate the tasks across all of those shards, and then you have all of the file scan tasks, and can do further planning, like breaking those file scan tasks into actual like split tasks, or split them, combine them, do whatever to produce the combined scan tasks. So it's basically the plan files operation.
Quick question.
yeah.
Is a shard basically a combined scan task, or it's
No. So sharding is interesting, and that's why I want to sort of outline what the proposal has. A shard has no clear definition in the proposal. What it sounds like is a shard is any division of scan planning that you want to produce. So the proposal, I think, is built around this idea that once you create the scan, they're going to get started planning it right away. And a shard is a way to have smaller result sets, right? So that we say, okay, we're going to get started, and then here are a whole bunch of shard IDs, and then I pull pieces of the result set using those shard IDs. Now, one thing that makes that even more complicated is if a given shard produces too many data files, the idea is that you can paginate the files coming back in a shard, because you'll get a set of files and then maybe another link that says, go here for the next set of files.
I guess shard probably allow us to do the distributed scan planning. I think Anton did that in the Java, right?
Exactly. So that's one thing that this would help with. So you can parallelize both the service side and the client side using shards. So I could, have a worker pool that goes and pulls in parallel from a parallel set of tasks on the service side, and everything just hits, different shard IDs to pull down those data files. You can also, use this as a way to parallelize on the service by, I guess, mapping shard IDs to different nodes, although it's a little unclear how that would happen. The main thing, I think, is that the idea is to be able to break down that scan into different chunks and do those chunks in parallel, at least on the client. Any questions or commentary on that plan before we move on to any concerns?
I mean, I think I wrote most of my thoughts on the doc. I don't know if we should just keep moving. I don't know.
All right. Yeah, I was kind of hoping that Jack and others would be here, so maybe it isn't as productive as it could be. I think
the way these.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would the way these shards generated be specific to engines in that case, or the list of shards that are returned?
It's unclear how, from the doc, how to produce shards.
I mean,
go ahead, Russell.
Well, I would say it shouldn't be engine specific, because it'd basically be the same way the core library produces some set of scan tasks, and a shard is a undefined at the moment amount of scan tasks. So however an engine normally deals with that now is how it would deal with this. It would get that JSON and convert it into its local representation, which it would ship out. I mean, we do have engines that do completely different rules for how they do that. Like Trino just ignores whatever we combine and just reads every file separately. And there's nothing to stop you from doing that in this plan either. I know that's one of my big thoughts on this, though, is how Trino has that model, right, where it does immediate execution upon the first scan task it plans. And we need to be sure that we're able to still do that, or else all of a sudden what was a sub-second Trino query might become a multi-second Trino query if it has to wait for a whole shard to be planned before it can start executing. I don't know, theoretically. I'm just guessing,
So I'm not sure that Trino actually does that correctly, because I thought that it would produce all the tasks in order to get enough data to basically do cost-based optimization. So I thought it was already doing all the planning ahead of time, but I agree, in principle, you should be able to fetch just one piece and start operations based on that one piece.
Yeah, I don't know how old my Trino information is. When I was looking at their scan code a while back, it just pulled the iterator, and the moment it had a single combined scan task, it would split it and feed that into the query engine.
I think it's the way, it's actually the way that statistics are calculated. It ends up planning the entire thing and keeping it beforehand. But I'm not up to date on that, so don't. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. The intent is certainly to get an iterator and start pulling and executing immediately. I think the sharding seems like a good idea to me for that, as well as parallel planning. So like if you get 1,000 shards, you can parallelize and use like a Spark execution to pull all of that data from a large service or something like that. It also makes sense to me that we would be able to hit multiple nodes in the service, and this can be a way to avoid having like too much memory consumption, because we don't want a single node in the REST catalog service to be responsible for planning 2 million data files from a table, taking a ton of CPU and a ton of other resources until the client actually comes and pulls those. I think the issue, though, there are two things. I don't know that we need pagination as well as sharding, because it seems to be fairly complicated. And given how I think we would produce shards, I think we can guarantee that the shards are of some maximum size, right? We'd be able to say, like, I know that this manifest has 10,000 data files in it, and therefore I'm not going to have more than 10,000 files in it. So I think that sharding actually gives us the flexibility that we need to avoid pagination. That was one of my my feedback. Then the other is, I would love to make this actual protocol stateless by saying, rather than producing shard IDs, we should just send back the task information for producing data for a shard. Even if you have shard IDs, so that we can like cache on the service and get things started ahead of time and do whatever optimizations in the service we want to do. I would love to be able to actually send that data for a shard back, so that you don't actually have to back the service with some persistent state or something like that. Cool.
Makes sense. I think we'd also love to have a look, Ryan, because internally I think we have a use case with the Droid indexer that could use this API directly for the file scan tasks.
Yeah, and I think there were other minor things like passing partition information back. We want that to actually be the real partition tuple, so that we can use this for actual planning and like metadata ag query pushdown. Yeah. Okay, cool. Doesn't sound like there's much discussion here, so we'll continue on the list. Does anyone we can also talk about REST catalog append and other operations, or we can continue that on the mailing list. Okay, yeah, let's follow up with that one on the mailing list. I would encourage people to take a look at it and think through that proposal. So it's basically proposing that we take all of the current Java operations in the Java API, which are sort of independent of the spec. It's just how we've organized operations in the API, and make those routes in the REST spec. And that I think, at least for me, I'm very skeptical that is worth the effort and is a good idea. I think that we could possibly come up with a better API for like add all of these files, remove all of these files, and so on. As well as I think that this makes a lot of the consistency very hard to do, because you're essentially passing like consistency filters and expressions and things like that up to the service, which means the consistency primitives need to be really well planned. And also, we would not be able to add consistency primitives very easily at all. So I'm pretty concerned about the idea here. However, some of the smaller cases like appends, there are a lot of good use cases around like breaking up appends. So like things that don't have a good way to coalesce new data files into commits. You know, if you could just post that new data file to a service with the location and information for that data file, and know that within some period of time it's going to get coalesced into a commit and commit to the table, that would be really cool. But then that's sort of orthogonal to what they're actually proposing, because they're proposing an add files API that immediately does a commit. So I think there's quite a bit of discussion needed on the REST catalog commit approach. And then the last one I wanted to bring up was the idea of using scan planning to be an interface to other formats like Hive. It seems a little odd to me, because REST catalog, we're you know, trying to get broadly supported, and Hive is already broadly supported. But I am wondering, like, does anyone have use cases for this where you would like to expose Hive tables as though they were Iceberg tables, just without with somewhat compromised metadata?
Kinda. I mean, I guess I've got a lot of legacy cases where that might. I would rather those people just move, is what I would want. So that's really the way I think about it. Is like, it's kind of nice for compatibility. I think the ability to just read a pile of files is actually kind of nice. The full Hive compatibility I don't think is as important. So like, if I could just say REST catalog can take like a path or something and turn that into a scan that Iceberg could use, is kind of nice. That's about it though.
So in that use case, we don't want to migrate the Hive table, but we want to migrate the catalog from, let's say, HMS to REST. Is that the intention?
Just give like a single endpoint to access when talking to something.
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah, so I think it, you know, it gives you the ability to upgrade your catalog. So like right now, here's a good example, I guess. Right now, Spark doesn't support multi-catalog, right? Because all of the Hive tables are V1 tables. And so like, if you want multi-catalog Spark, you have to like, you just can't use Hive tables. You have to use only Iceberg tables. You would be able to reuse everything in Spark and Iceberg if you were able to actually do that upgrade on the server side. So if you said, hey, let's put a REST catalog in front of my Hive catalog, it gives you all of the benefits of REST, and you would probably be able to continue reading from that Hive catalog. Then if you're reading from the Hive catalog in that way, you can actually add the multi-catalog support without needing to completely re-implement Hive tables in Iceberg. Now, part of the problem, though, is that only works for Parquet or Avro or something like that, and you would need a name mapping in order to do column projection. So, like, it only works for formats supported by Iceberg, not the generic, like, hey, I've got JSON files out there, or CSV, or you know, regex, or arbitrary other things. maybe that's okay.
So I mean, the thing is, we do have a ton of those. Like, I want to have multiple Hive catalogs and Spark use cases, and I almost always am just like, well, one of them has to be Iceberg. You're moving into the future here, because we can support multiple Iceberg catalogs. So just move one of them. You get one Hive, and you get as many Iceberg as you want. Isn't that an appealing reason to switch now? So I'm not super excited about giving them a reason not to move. So
Yeah.
so I'm sure you've heard this too, Stephen. We talked to a lot of the same people.
So, I mean, doesn't Nessie also support Hive as well? What does the Nessie team think about this idea? Or does it not matter because you're not using the REST protocol?
Yeah, Nessie right now uses its own Iceberg catalog. That's how Nessie integrates. Right. So basically, Nessie is a peer to Hive catalog in Iceberg.
Yes. So don't you support Hive tables in Nessie?
Not that I know.
Okay, maybe that was an older version. I thought it originally supported multiple table formats.
Yeah, we had some support for what was that? Not Hive, but there was Delta Lake, but we had to drop it. It didn't take on very well.
Oh, okay. Anyway, okay. The last thing on the list then is Hive catalog views. So I would be very interested in hearing from people with a Hive catalog how we should, or discussing how we should track views in the Hive catalog. So the PR that is posted, I haven't looked at it since a week ago, so this may have changed, but the original proposal was to use the table type. So it actually originally broke compatibility with Iceberg tables, because Iceberg really only creates a table and doesn't specify the table type as external or anything else. You can use managed tables, you can use external tables. The only thing that matters is that there's an table underscore type in properties that is set to Iceberg. So what this originally did was it tried to clarify and use the external table type for all Iceberg tables and the view table type for all Iceberg views. The problem then is anything that is not already using external table would just be lost. In fact, like table listing would no longer be able to see those things. So I think it is a bit of a problem there. So assuming that we take care of that and remove this like dependency on setting the table type for tables and fix that, how do we want to represent views? Should that actually be a view in the Hive catalog, or should that just be a table with a different Iceberg table type property?
I'd vote that. Different Iceberg table property.
Okay, so
the implementations already have to distinguish between those and normal Hive tables, so it might as well force one more distinction you have to make.
that sounds very reasonable to me. I think it also, you know, part of the thing that I like about our existing Hive support is that we understand how Hive works with it, right? If you try to read an Iceberg table without Iceberg support, then it just blows up. On the other hand, I don't know how to do that in normal Hive with a view, right? Is there something in a Hive view that's going to cause it to just blow up? Hopefully, but we don't know what that is. And unless we sort of know the trade-offs of doing that, this is where maybe Peter Very could chime in and have a good opinion if he can remember the old Hive days. Because it's just very unclear what the best thing for Hive is going to be. Now, we may also be precluding Hive from being able to support Iceberg views in general if we don't go down this view table type path. I'm somewhat more okay with that because I think we could modify Hive to, be able to recognize an iceberg view and get it in that code path. It's not like it'd be that ugly to do. So yeah, I think at least if we use the exact same table with a file input format that can't be read or instantiated, we at least know that it's always going to fail and say, hey, this is an iceberg view.
I'm not sure that I don't recall, but I don't think views actually have like the Sharding information. But what you can use is the original and expanded text and set something that's invalid in there, because then when Hive tries to parse it, you might even be able to get a message in there that says, hey, can't execute SQL, this is an iceberg view, or something like that. So there may be things that we can still leverage from how Hive stores views, but I don't think the Sharding approach we use for tables is likely to work.
Well, no, I think that the nice thing about the Sharding approach that we use for tables is that we know it will definitely fail. We would need to set additional properties for views to make sure views fail when something tries to access a Hive view. And the other thing is, like, I guess this would be for like Trino's Hive Iceberg support, right? What is the right thing to do there? Because I know Trino has its own way of storing stuff in there. Maybe we.
The Trino views are incompatible with Hive as well. So it would be nice if like we store an iceberg view in Hive, it's actually compatible across both, in terms of at least like how are we referencing the actual view location and consistency in terms of breaking where it should.
I think the main thing is we want to break anything that doesn't know about iceberg views at all and enable things that do know about iceberg views to easily load and work with them. It seems like, do we know if Trino is using the Hive view table type?
Yeah, it is, and it's using the expanded text and the original text. And so I think that's at least a point, if not with some view properties or something like that, where we could just break them, because if we put garbage in those fields, or something that would indicate that it's not possible to use, if they attempt to use it, they'll break. Okay. That's what Hive and Trino both use.
That seems pretty reasonable to me. So like if they're already doing that, then that also ensures that at least listing iceberg views and that sort of thing will work in Hive and Trino out of the box. Then we can go and figure out how to make sure that those views fail. Okay. I think that's good.
I think in Hive you can set properties. So if we can set properties that indicate that it's an iceberg view, then in Trino with their catalog implementation, if they're trying to load it, at least they could distinguish between this is a Hive view versus an iceberg view and load it appropriately. So we can get integration into the other catalog implementations in Trino.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds like a good path forward. I think we'll hop back on that Hive PR and ask for a little bit more clarification. We may also be able to add a test that like creates a Hive view and fails to read it. Okay. Well, we're at time, so thank you everyone for coming today and discussing. I appreciate it. See you in how far away from holidays are we? Oh, the next one would be January 3rd. Are we doing this January 3rd? Will people be?
I'll be.
We might cancel that one. We'll see, since it is so close to the holidays. Yeah, but thank you everyone. Great to catch up, and thank you for all your contributions. Have a great holiday. Bye.